So this from Martin in Old Portsmouth, a regular. Dear Simon and Sprout Boy, so Iron Man critics have thus far voiced their approval. Will Mark be joining them, or as ever, going his own way? An iconoclastic figure, standing apart, arms folded, chin thrust boldly to the fore, refusing to bow to the will of the herd, and refusing to talk to anyone who says that the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford is dull, self-referential tosh. I suppose it all comes down to how you see Robert Downey Jr. Is he a talentless, hapless, druggy shambles, or, as others think, a very talented, hapless, druggy shambles? Here we go. This is what Mark thinks. This is the review for Iron Man.
It's such a build-up, Simon. And what if I now just go? Good. It's all right. So, latest comic book adaptation, X-Men, Hulk, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Elektra, everything in comic books is now making its way slowly to the screen thanks to Marvel and all the rest of them. Directed by Jon Favreau, who started out, in things like Swingers, and I think recently directed movies like Zathura. And there's an interview with Jon Favreau in which he was asked what he sort of saw as his aspiration for Iron Man, and he said, well, I really, really like what Christopher Nolan did with Batman Begins, and that's kind of what that set the bar very high. And he's right, it has set the bar very high, and there's no sense that we're getting near that bar, because there isn't the depth or the darkness of that in this, although I'm not entirely sure that it wants to be. It is on the sort of shiny, happy side rather than on the dark and murky side. So Robert Downey Jr., he, as you were formerly mentioning, is a hugely rich arms manufacturer, Tony Stark, inventor of the Jericho bomb. There's a lovely line at the beginning when he says, it's, people say things that, you want weapons that you never have to use. No, I make weapons that you only have to use once, which is very good. And then he goes out to the Middle East, where he is bombed by his own weapons, taken captive by a bunch of terrorists who were armed with his own weapons, and told to build them a Jericho bomb. Waking up in the cell after having been bombed, he finds himself with an implant in his chest, which is connected to a car battery. Now, there's some flummoxing here about exactly what this implant is doing. At the beginning, he's told that it's there because he's got shrapnel in his blood supply, and it's an electromagnet there to stop the stuff going into his heart. He then redesigns it, and it becomes so much more than an electromagnet. In fact, it becomes the thing that powers a metal suit, which he then uses to get out of the Middle East, go back to America, where he decides that in fact the arms trade this is all just set up, that the arms trade is a bad thing. What he wants to do. This is the
pre-title sequence.
Well, it's not the pre-titles, but actually, because the whole movie is really setting up the character of Iron Man, it's obviously laying out the terms of the franchise. So then he develops Iron Man, which is a flying iron suit, what can do lots of brilliant things because he's got this thing in his chest, and he tries it out in the first instance by going back to the place where he was kidnapped and doing away with all the weapons of his own that have fallen into the wrong hands. So here's the thing: Robert Downey is a contradictory character. On the one hand, he has been incredibly annoying in the past. There are films that he's made in which you just please stop doing that thing. And when all he does is, I can talk, but he talks fast and ticks, and and he plays crazies. he is, slightly crazy himself anyway, and he plays crazy people. There was that famous bit of footage of him saying that thing about when he was talking about addiction and saying it's like, the gun is in your mouth and I like the taste of the metal, and you just think you are completely nuts, aren't you? And he sort of parlays that into his screen role. So that's what he does. He does crazies, and occasionally it's really, really annoying, and occasionally it kind of gets away with it. And in this case, it's fairly well suited. He's funny, he's witty, and and all those other things, which actually at the worst of everything going wrong for him, he wasn't any of those things. So he's quite watchable, although he is essentially just doing the Robert Downey Jr., which is like that. That's how he talks.
That is not.
It is.
That is not.
And then it's like, just put in the words.
That's the worst one you've done yet.
No, it's not. Okay, how does Robert Downey Jr. go?
I'm not. It's not my job.
He does. It's a bit lower. It's like
that sounds like a train.
Yeah, but that's it. That's what he sounds like. It's almost like you can take the words out, and there is just there's the tune. There's the tune of the Robert Downey Jr. performance. Then next to that, you have the Gwyneth Paltrow performance, which goes. Because that's what that's right. That's exactly what Gwyneth Paltrow does. Doesn't matter who she's playing. Doesn't matter whether she's wearing 10-inch high heels, dressed as a dominator. Doesn't make any difference. It's still Gwyneth going. So key central relationship in the thing between and wears a little bit thin.
No.
Then coming in from the side, Jeff Bridges, and Jeff Bridges is brilliant. Jeff Bridges walks on the beginning of he's got shaven head and beard. You know, it's the head upside down arrangement, which, as anyone who knows about the iconography of this thing, any guy who's got beard, shaven head,
bad guy.
Okay,
Definitely.
He's introduced as a good guy, but clearly
straight away
he's a bad guy. And I love Jeff Bridges. I really love Jeff Bridges. I think he's just one of those people. I don't care what he's doing. I will watch him in absolutely anything. I mean, I just think he's a terrific screen presence, and he really chews the screen up as the good guy who is in fact obviously going to turn out to be the bad guy. And there's a good hour, maybe an hour and a little bit more of that character stuff kind of working. And it's fine. And then it all falls apart at the moment that Jeff puts on his own Iron Man suit and becomes the other Iron Man who's going to have the battle with him, and then it turns into Transformers. And then there is 20-25 minutes of Transformers. And it's a real shame, but it's the compromise that so many of the comic book strip adaptations make, is that they have character ambitions. They understand that what's really interesting about these things is that it's the people trapped within the circumstances, and yet, because they're multi-million-dollar huge things, they have to just end up with people hitting things. And there are some, I mean, I think in the case of what Christopher Nolan did with the Batman movies, I think he really managed to give you that sense that you've got incredible spectacle, but there's substance all the way through it. But with this, you really feel like, here's the stuff. It's not really deep, dark stuff. It's just fine. And then here's the 20 minutes of Transformers at the end, and then that'll be the beginning of the franchise. So it's what would be referred to, by Roger Ebert as a waving thumb. There's a good hour that's okay, and there's slightly less than an hour that's substandard, and it sort of ends up falling in the middle. But it's a shame, because at the beginning you think there is going to be something working, because Robert Downey Jr. has this rebellious presence, and it's kind of vaguely political, but not really. But then he gets into the same room as Gwyneth Paltrow, and then it's...
And then the Jeff Bridges...